Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to dig into the concept of tolerance, but not just as some vague, fuzzy idea. We're looking at it as a really structured principle that, according to our source material, starts right in the home and then ripples outward. We're going to unpack this whole framework, from family life all the way to global dialogue. So let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to get a solid definition of what tolerance even means according to the source. Then, we'll follow how it's applied in these three expanding circles, starting with the family, then the community, and finally the dialogue between different faiths. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at the practical steps the source suggests for actually making it happen.
Our whole journey today is really guided by this one central question, which comes directly from the source material itself. How should tolerance be fostered? Let's see if we can unpack the answer piece by piece.
So, first things first, what is tolerance? Before we can talk about how it works, we really need to understand what the source is talking about. And it's positioned as something way more than just, being nice. It's actually framed as a critical ingredient for building a healthy society.
So check this out. Tolerance isn't just a passive feeling. The text here calls it a device that upholds human rights, our daily interactions, and cultural diversity. And look at the scope here. It applies on every single level. For you as an individual, for the groups we're a part of, and for the entire state. It's presented as this active, foundational machine that makes society work.
Okay, so with that pretty powerful definition in mind, where does the practice of tolerance actually begin? Well, according to our source, it all starts in the most basic unit of society there is, the home. This is what it calls the first circle.
And here it is. The source is really clear that the practice of tolerance kicks off right here, inside the family. We're talking about the interactions between a husband and a wife, between parents and their kids, and between siblings. This is basically the training ground, right? It's where the foundation for everything else gets built.
So once that foundation is laid within the family, the principle naturally starts to expand outward. And that brings us to the second circle of tolerance, the wider community.
Now, in this second circle, the focus shifts to the community. The text says that this virtue of tolerance must be emphasized among Muslims for a very specific reason, to promote unity and to accept the diversity that exists within the community. And according to the source, this is the secret sauce to creating that sound society we talked about at the beginning.
Okay, so we've gone from the home to the community. Now we're going to zoom out one last time to the final and broadest level of interaction that the text describes. This third circle stretches beyond the immediate community to build dialogue between completely different faiths.
Right here, the source gives us a really clear playbook for how Muslims and non-Muslims can interact. And it's not about just, passively putting up with each other. It's based on three very active ideas: having interfaith dialogue, building genuine relationships, and actively cooperating. It's a very proactive way to build bridges.
And what's really cool is that the text doesn't just leave this as a theory. It points to actual concrete examples. For instance, the fact that you can see mosques, churches, and synagogues standing side by side in some Muslim countries. The source presents this as a physical manifestation of that tolerance, something expressed through mercy and real respect for different beliefs.
And just to really hammer the point home, the source makes this powerful statement. Tolerance in Islam is not a mere fairy tale phrase. That's a pretty strong way of putting it, right? It really underscores that these ideas are meant to be practical, essential parts of the faith, not some abstract pie-in-the-sky ideal.
So you might be wondering, where does all this come from? Well, the text is very clear that these aren't some New Age interpretations. It says these principles stem directly from the essence of Islam and the teachings prescribed by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
So, we've seen what tolerance is and where it applies. But that takes us right back to our big question from the start. How is it actually fostered? How do you do it? The source doesn't just leave it as an idea. It actually lays out a practical approach to make it real.
The source outlines this really clear three-step approach. Step 1 is education and exposure, basically learning to appreciate and respect the differences that make us all unique. Step 2 is more internal. You have to actively reject stereotypes and generalizations. And finally, step 3 is the external action, actually going out and fostering good relations through dialogue with non-Muslims.
Now, this slide here is really interesting because it draws a very clear line. The text clarifies that fostering good relations, the do, is all about developing respect and cooperation,
But it also gives a very specific don't. This doesn't mean you have to accept things that go against your own religion. It's all about finding that balance between respecting others while holding true to your own beliefs.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. After walking through this whole framework, we're kind of left with this big question. In the world we live in right now, a world that's so interconnected, how can we apply these expanding circles of tolerance? Starting in our own homes, moving out into our communities, and then reaching across the entire globe. It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.